I got caught up in the fun in Connecticut yesterday. The gasoline tanker caught on fire on 95 and shut the whole northeast corridor down.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Fortunately, we weren't on 95, but it took us, instead of what a trip that normally takes 2.5 hours, took 4 hours to get down there.
Oh,
3.5 hours coming back. It was just awful.
that's brutal. I hope nobody was hurt.
Nobody was hurt, fortunately. But they there's a bridge over 95 that got scorched, and they're going to have to take it down. So it's not fixed. So don't go anywhere near 95
That's good to know.
in the next week or so.
It's really scary. Good morning, Mandy.
Morning. Are you now done, Athena, or do you still have that one left? You're done.
I turned in my final.
Yay! Such a great feeling when that happens.
I thought I was going to feel relieved, and I just feel kind of bummed. I'm kind of bummed out. It's over.
I can tell you that I for some time after finishing, I kept having dreams that I had like one more thing to submit, or I'd forgotten one thing, or there was some deadline to meet. And then I realized it was literally I was dreaming.
Oh.
So.
It's so funny how stereotypical some of those stress dreams can be sometimes. Like,
Yes.
I've had dreams where I'm like, really? This is like out of a cartoon or something. It's so
Right,
silly.
right. There are times when I woke up feeling refreshed because I was not dreaming anymore.
Yeah. Hi, Andy. Good morning.
Andy, you need to turn on your microphone. Just like I needed to turn on my audio. Hear people.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I did hear you talking about the dreams that go with school, and they actually lasted for years afterwards. But it always had to do when something was coming with a deadline.
Yeah.
I get stress dreams about work too. I had to tell Paul one morning I came in, and I thought it was so funny because the night before I dreamed that he told me he was embarrassed because I was giving a presentation or something and I mixed metaphors. He's like, it's so embarrassing that you mixed metaphors.
Mixed metaphors. Come on. And he's a handy college graduate.
Just such a very specific.
I was feeling badly because we rely on you so much, Athena, and I know you were under so much pressure, and it just is
It's
marvelous.
the time.
Hold it together.
Thank you. The timing of everything has been, it was really tough to have all of this happening, finishing up the semester at the same time we were trying to finish the budget, but we got it all done. And now I can get back to focusing on you folks.
You probably want to go back to graduate school.
Yeah, really. That's not a reward.
It will be nice to just have one, or at least one in addition to all the home stuff, family stuff.
You got your trip to Washington in.
That was so fun. I highly recommend going there with kids. My kids totally loved it. It was so much fun to go with them.
Yeah, you can spend a week just going to the museums on the mall.
Yeah, there's so much to do.
There's everything is there.
The only thing I was disappointed was I really wanted to go to one of Jose Andres' restaurants there because love eating. But my kids were not into a fancy dinner, so
Uh-huh.
let's skip it. But there was still a lot of good food to eat that we found. All right, Bob, it's 10:01. I'm going to open to attendees.
Okay.
And then
Hmm.
when you're ready, I'm missing Kathy,
I'm missing Kathy and
Alicia, and Matt.
But we have a quorum.
We do. So whenever you're ready.
well, why don't we start? It's going to be a short meeting, so hopefully,
All right,
Recording in
we're recording.
progress.
okay, I'm going to call the meeting of the Amherst Finance Committee to order at 10:02 a.m. This meeting is conducted remotely, so I want to go around the folks who are present, the quorum that is present, and make sure that you can hear me and I can hear you. Bernie?
Present.
Councilor Haneke?
Present.
Andy?
Present.
Okay, that's the full group of people that we have. I just wanted to do two things today. One is to have an initial discussion on the additional appropriation for the pumper truck, because we're going to have a public hearing on the 20th to go over this. And then Lynn wants us to try to meet as a finance committee after the public hearing and vote on this if we can. There's a bit of a time crunch on this. If that doesn't work, the only other option we have is we do have a meeting scheduled on the 21st. We could vote then, but Lynn would like us to vote on the evening of the 20th. So if you can mark your calendars for that, that would be great. Councilor Haneke?
Yeah. I know this is my first year on finance, but in the past, hasn't finance taken sort of a preliminary vote pending the required public forum, and then after the public forum sort of said, does anyone feel a need to revisit that vote? Could we do it that way, maybe?
Yeah.
That's actually what I was raising my hand to say too.
Okay. So why don't we have if there's any discussion of this, we can discuss it now. Does anyone have any questions about it? Okay, well, I guess then we'll need a motion to at least tentatively approve the additional appropriation.
Recommend.
Recommend, excuse me.
Thanks.
I'll make a motion. I move to recommend pending the required public forum, the supplemental appropriation request FY 24-05D Fire Department pumper truck.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and second. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll start off. I vote aye. Bernie?
Support.
Councilor Haneke?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
All right, that's everyone present. It's unanimous. 3 councilors in favor, 1 resident member in favor, and 2 councilors absent, 1 resident member absent. So, okay, we'll just revisit this on the 20th. I just wondered if there's any public comment. The only one in the audience is Lynn. Lynn, you're welcome to comment. Oh, no, there's another attendee. There's two members of the public are present. If you want to if you want to make a public comment, please raise your hand and we'll bring you into the meeting so you can offer up your comment. Okay, I don't see any hands, so we'll close the public comment period. The only other thing I wanted to talk about was the review of the town budget. I sent around a spreadsheet where, with the help of Councilor Haneke and Kathy, we kind of grouped together departments, if you will, and put them against the the town manager goals. Athena, can I share my screen?
You can, if it's easier for me too. I have it.
Okay, do you have it? Yeah.
I do have it open.
Okay, if you can put that up there, just
Sure.
so to kind of so the public can see it, and so we can just have a quick talk about it. So the rows going down are the town manager goals, and the ones that are highlighted in yellow were the goals that the town council considered, the sub goals the town council considered most important in a meeting we had several weeks ago. The columns are the different departments, the budgets of the different departments or the different aspects of the budget. And at the very top, I have a tentative plan for when we would review each of these. Obviously, we may have to switch that around because it depends on the availability of the department heads to attend, but that list, at least leave that as the tentative schedule. The town manager will not give us the budget officially until the 6th, and we have a meeting scheduled for the 7th, but I thought that would be too quick for us to actually start the review. So we'll start it on the Friday the 10th, a week from today. I think that makes some sense. So what I would like individuals on the committee to do is to volunteer for one of the groupings that I have. Bernie has already indicated that he would like to do the DPW, Public Works and Enterprise Funds. I'm open to anyone choosing something else. Also, just so you know, the grayed out departments, we felt that they're pretty straightforward in terms of budget. So the department heads did not need to show up to the meeting. And so we thought that, it would streamline the review of the budget, not to have to drag everybody into they're of course welcome to show up, but they're not required to. So I don't know if there's any discussion of this. Any thoughts?
Well, I said I thought it was an interesting approach. Paul addresses some of this in the current budget document that we all got on the 1st of May. So it'd be interesting to compare his take with this. I think that the challenge I have with this is it has performance indicators for the town manager, but it doesn't have, we don't have performance indicators or a way of critiquing the adequacy of the budget given the functions the department has to perform over and above, sometimes in conflict with the town manager goals. So looking at The first category meets financial guidelines. I think that's probably an easy one. Looking at some of the others, it's going to be difficult to. It may be difficult to match the town manager goals with what's in the budget, but none of this speaks to performance indicators on the part of these departments. And again, I mean, like taking public works, everybody talks about potholes in in road repairs. My own feeling is that the climate lens piece really does apply to DPW. Probably as much as any other department. But beyond that, there's no way of evaluating how effective the budget will be in allowing repair of roads, sidewalks, acquisition of equipment, so on and so on. So, like I said, I'm perfectly willing to go along with this plan, but I think I'd be inclined to inject some performance recommendations into any report.
Point of order, Bob, can we just quickly confirm that Matt and Kathy can hear and be heard? They've joined us.
Okay, yeah, I was going to do that. Matt, can you hear us?
I can, and I can hear you, and I hope you can hear me. Thanks.
Yep, we can hear you. Kathy?
Yeah, and I apologize for being late. I was reading the budget, which was so absorbing that I couldn't tear myself away. Thanks.
Okay, so did both of you hear Bernie's comments? Okay, great. Councilor Haneke?
A couple things that are not a little disjointed. Number one, I had a question about the schedule of particularly the May 21st meeting. Are we having our public hearing on the budget on May 21st? And if so, are we planning on still doing a 2 p.m. meeting and then a hearing at whatever time the hearing is set for? That concerns me, but I just wanted to put out there, like, I'm willing to do it. I can do it, but I wanted to make sure that the committee was okay with that. So we can talk about that later, but I wanted to bring that up in terms of meeting schedule. Meeting schedule 2 on the 7th. I wonder if it would be possible to start this review on the 7th. I know we already all have the budget. I know the presentation's not till the 6th, but if we know what we're doing on the 7th, we might be able to move some to the 7th. I was thinking particularly the capital improvement plan, maybe, because I know Kathy's already, and Bob, I think you guys are already sort of well into what that one's got, having served on JCPC, that maybe we could do that one on the 7th. And maybe something else, potentially even schools or library, or, I'm just rethinking, like, could we move some stuff to the 7th to maybe get the 21st meeting out of it so that we can do just the hearing on the 21st. To what Bernie said, in having started to read the budget and the budget document, I think it would look like a completely different review. I think it's worth trying, but the guidelines part, I went through the guidelines yesterday for both the CIP and the, so for the capital side and the sort of the budget side, and came up with, at least on the budget side, like 15 different things we could check the budget for, some of which go, I think, more into individual department questions than overall budget guidelines. As Bernie said, some of it's easy. Does it meet our 3% or 4% or equal increase guideline? But, some of the guidelines are things like support expense reduction strategies and initiatives, including responsible reassignment of costs outside the general fund, regionalization, reorganization, add efficiencies, right? So that's hard to see in a budget, but that could be the basis of some questions for the individual departments of how does this budget support that guideline? So I don't also then know necessarily whether, now that I look at the budget and all of this, whether a specific meeting on does the overall budget meet the financial guidelines versus teasing out these parts of the guidelines and making sure we ask those questions of the departments and saying, how does this budget meet that part of the guideline, might make more sense.
Andy? You're mute, Andy.
Building on what Mandy just started with, I do think that there's a lot we can do on the 7th because we have seen the budget already, and it's worth. We usually have started by having the overarching discussion of the budget as a during a first meeting, and any sort of overall impressions. But the other is the revenue side. I think we need to have reserved some opportunity to talk about that, and that usually can come up in a first meeting. I think that my second observation about the schedule is that I'm not sure that putting the schools and library off, particularly the schools, until very late in the process is the best idea because first of all, it's the largest school education is the largest expenditure of the town. It's the greatest proportion of the budget, and it has the highest anxiety level that has sort of surfaced in the discussion this year and has future implications. And if we put it off towards the end, we lose the opportunity to come back to it a second time if there are questions raised that need follow-up information provided or follow-up action needed before we can actually make a recommendation on it. So I would very much encourage us to think about moving the schools up earlier. And I think we do have to recognize that on May 11th is the Pelham Town meeting, so that by the time we get to our meeting on the 14th, we may be in a position where if Pelham also votes to adopt the 6% budget recommended by the Regional School Committee, that is going to be the budget. And we're then into the question of not just what our view is on it, but how we're going to pay for it. Because there's a gap that's between what has been presented by the town manager, and he acknowledges that you know, it's got to be paid for if it's if that ends up being the budget. So I think those are my major thoughts initially. Thanks.
Okay. Kathy?
Yeah, I'm just gathering my thoughts, trying to build on what was just said. And I was opening a calendar. So I definitely think on May 7th, we should pick something, in addition to general, something substantive. I think the capital improvement plan makes sense, and the library budget might be the other one with a limit on the amount of time spent on it, you know. And one of the things I'd like to focus on, Andy mentioned revenues. It's sort of in that mix. I can find what our reserve funds are sort of when I look for them, but just talking about what we have in reserves in connection with the capital improvement plan. We don't yet have, even though we're at a third quarter plus in terms of this fiscal year, so we should be starting to know whether we're going to have an excess this year. by the end of June. Just, the projection of what, that's a blank when you look down the budget column on what are we generating. And I think Andy's right. I didn't see, as you know, I missed the beginning of your discussion. I don't know whether we saw a potential when we're talking to which departments, but I thought schools on May 14th makes a lot of sense, with regional first and elementary second. And on the 10th, picking something meaty, public safety, for example, something that would naturally go together. So we would have gotten where Andy was focused on, we would have gotten big chunks of the budget done by the 14th of May. So those are just thoughts on this overlay. Bob, I didn't send in notes because I didn't think a lot about it when you first sent it in, the town manager. I'm not sure it's helpful other than keeping it in mind when we're going over the different departments, as a focus, because asking questions about staffing and challenges ahead will be a big thing. So keeping it in mind. And then Mandy, I thought it was helpful thinking about efficiencies. What are we doing? So I noticed, for example, the rental registration program is in as an increase of expenditures. And in the text, it says fees will offset that, but I don't know how to find those two things. So when we go through the general government structure, I'd like to be able to understand where I can see where a grant is offsetting expenditures, a fee is offsetting it, so it's in there and it's blended in. So I'd like to make sure we allow plenty of time for the things we need to have longer discussions on. So those are my two overarching comments, getting more quickly into the budget on May 7th and something meaty on the 10th and the schools by the 14th.
Bernie?
Yeah, I would just voice my agreement with accelerating the proposal to move the schools and the library up. And the 14th does seem to be a good date to do that. I'd also concur that if we can do something substantial on the 10th, not that looking at the overall budget and capital improvements plan is substantial, but maybe something more directed would be helpful. The other thing I would say is I know Councillor Haneke to be a very careful reader, and I would ask that she share her notes on the guidelines in those areas that she's highlighted, because I think it would be helpful certainly for myself and maybe for everybody else as we go through the budget to focus on that stuff.
Councilor Haneke?
So I'm happy to, I literally just went through the guidelines and pulled out sentences and put them into bullet points that could then potentially be checked off. But I'm happy to create a document that has that both as I thought things related to capital and then sort of the operating general government side. This conversation's great. So if we do something more substantial on the 7th, like capital improvement, library revenues, I'm wondering if the 10th you can delete capital improvement from the 10th potentially then. Overall budget, if it really is, does this meet the guidelines? As in my start of review of the budget, I think that some of that is obvious, but I think that question comes through with each of the department sections. Does this department meet the guidelines? Does this, as we start forming those questions. So I'm not sure the 10th needs a specific discussion on it versus when we get to the final vote, an acknowledgement of, after we've done everything, yes, it meets the guidelines, or no, it doesn't, right? So it, in some sense, we might be able to free up the 10th to, I'm thinking, move the manager section to the 10th. And I'm hesitant to hold the school conversation until after the 11th with Pelham. I'd kind of like to start some of that. We've already started some of it, right? Could we if we've got the manager on the 10th and the manager is there, could we start talking about some options for the schools on the 10th? Given we all know the budget that the manager presented is not what the school committee has voted. Could we start those discussions about what are our options on the 10th? And get more clarification for us on what happens if Pelham does or does not vote a 6% budget, right? But could we potentially save some time on the 10th for that, and then as well as the manager section that's set for the 14th, and then go back to the schools on the 14th? I think it's imperative we have the school discussion before the public forum, the public hearing on the 21st. Instead of after. We might have to revisit it after, but I think the public should know what some options are before we get to that hearing.
Kathy?
Yeah, I'm just, thank you for, I guess it was Athena changing codes. I had neglected to see that way up at top were the dates of the meetings on, and like, what are we talking about here? But on the 10th, if possible, the regional school discussion would be great, but I know behind the scenes, it's both trying to figure out what, if we go to 6%, how do we do it? But what I heard from a recent meeting of the schools, that it's turning out that the field and track is not going to cost what they thought it was going to cost. And they've got new estimates coming in. And it might mean that there's excess funds on what we've allocated to the track that could be reallocated to a one-time budget thing. So what I don't know, Mandy, is whether someone will have thought through those interactions by the 10th. You know, so it's not that I know there will be, but, you know, we had said there might be ARPA money, there might be this, but to make sure we have a full discussion on it, I would want to make sure that that discussion had happened. And it's partly the school committee has to make some decisions. So moving it, so by the 14th, I'm assuming that has to be done. And that's why I thought the school shouldn't be any later than the 14th. And just on the 10th, town clerk elections, DEI, these are the ones that I think are shorter discussions. They could all be moved to the 10th. If we don't have something substantive on the 10th, I would just move them all there. You know, and then instead of it saying town manager, it might be schools up at top and then public safety on the 17th, you know, whatever, however this gets moved around. So schools both sets. So I was just trying to move schools up enough so that if we have to come back to it, and it also has the advantage of it's before the hearings, you know, so that we're focused on it with the hearing being on the 21st. So I haven't gone all the way over on the calendar, but trying to get the big ones done. You know, so Bob, there are lots of, and Athena, there are lots of, if I think of the 10th as get a lot of small ones in, there are quite a few on the 28th, smaller, you know, in terms of a person, one or two people, small budgets. So there's a cluster of them on the 28th. So I know this is reworking things, and the library being clustered with the schools on the 31st doesn't make sense to me. The library is a somewhat straightforward. They have to live within our guidelines. So that's why I would move, well, we've already done it, move the library to the 7th. And so I definitely think the two schools are probably a solid hour, a solid full time. So that's just a thinking through this. And then I don't know what moves to the 31st. So as we move things around.
Well, if we skip the 21st, per Councilor Haneke's suggestions, then we would be pushing everything back a meeting, basically. We could just flip DPW to the end, but that's a pretty big one.
That's a big one, yeah. You could flip the
No.
the things that are on the 28th, conservation planning and inspection. You know, I mean, it just, there's some, you know, everyone can chime in on which one should flip.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I would just move everything that's scheduled for the 28th, the big set of assistant town manager and service departments, to the 31st.
Mhm.
Put DPW on the 28th.
Mhm.
The schools, what was the 31st, the schools, as Athena has done, has moved to the 14th, and everything that was the 14th, I'd put facilities, move that sort of to the 10th too. So that the 10th is the manager. We've got the manager. We can talk about overall budget, anything that bleeds over from the 7th continues on the 10th with him and his budget. And the departments that sort of he's sort of in his overall department, if we're looking at big things, right? As we've grouped these. Something like this. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we could do what's now on the 28th, I guess. I think, or maybe it's the 31st. Yeah, it's the 31st. I think we could do all of those, the service departments and the assistant town manager departments. That's all in one. I think they're all sort of small, short discussions. So I think the 31st, Athena, or we could do the service departments and the assistant town manager.
Oh, all of these on the
Yeah,
31st.
they were all for one meeting. It wasn't, I didn't make that very clear, but you can probably just merge that one. the
Yeah,
531 cell.
I'll clean this up after.
And the 21st is still scheduled for the public hearing, so it's sort of like we don't have a separate regular meeting, right?
Right.
We're still meeting. We just don't have
Right.
two.
I'll make a note that there's
Yeah.
will be the public
It's-
hearing.
I think it's the 2 p.m. meeting that we're trying to get rid of that day.
Yep, I
Right.
understand. I was trying to move things around as you were talking. Did I miss anything?
I
These
think
will be merged.
I think you did it pretty you did it amazingly well. Not pretty well, but yeah, and you know, when you, of course, you want to talk with Paul if there's anything else that he thinks naturally fit into the 10th. You know, it's just if he thinks it's too scrunched at the end. I mean, that's the town manager's not as many people in a department kind of thing and not clustered. You know, the capital improvement plan coming on the 7th is where when people get to focus on it, with Bernie's comment on the potholes, what everyone's going to see is we're dropping back down on cash for roads out of our own budget. And we don't have the big excess ARPA money, and we didn't get a big bump in Chapter 90, you know, so there's a and. So it's whatever people think of our road fund for the last few years, it's been robust compared to what it's going to be. So that may be one of the things people want to talk about, as well as what else they do or don't see in the list of projects for the coming years.
Andy?
I was gonna suggest I take a different view on the 21st. If we need to meet, we should have two meetings. I would leave it blank, but not take it off the schedule entirely, just in case we decide that we're needing an additional meeting, we have a space for it, but that we acknowledge that it's a tentative. So I would suggest putting something like that in. The other thing that I was trying to struggle with is that the sustainability, there was something that Paul said when I was doing my first read through about creating sort of more of a department for sustainability. And so then you get to the questions of what is the cost of that and what is, the funding requirements that would go with it. How is it going to be structured? And also, as we know from this morning's newspaper, how the bike share program fits in and how that's going to be paid for. So there are pieces in there, and so when we talk about planning inspections with the new part, the statute or the bylaw that we passed for inspections, and there's a lot in there that may be a fairly substantial discussion. I would be hesitant to put too much in on the same day that we're dealing with making sure that we have enough time for it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
So, Andy, are you suggesting that sustainability and conservation could potentially move to the 21st if we decide it's too much?
Yeah, though we are going to have to make that decision before fairly early, because if you put something before,
Yeah,
usually
I'm just saying.
usually you put your additional meeting that you
Yeah,
may
no, I'm saying
cancel to the end, not in the middle.
yeah, so that if we don't give up that meeting, because I'm just looking, there's no easy place to move. It goes naturally with conservation a little bit, but Paul, we could talk about it on the 10th. Since it's in his write-up on it's a one-person department right now. What does he have in mind in terms of a fuller department? So, I don't know. It's a long list, as you noticed, for the
Yeah.
31st. So if we try to take something out, we should probably take a couple things out. And then the only place to put it is either move it all the way to the 10th or not cancel the 21st meeting. I'm just saying we don't have to. As Mandy said, if we thought we were meeting for an hour on two focused things and had a hearing, I'm okay with it. I mean, these are all blocked out on my calendar, so I'm okay with it. If we need to have a discussion on how would we do that, given how tight the budget is? So it's just a thought of moving. I mean, I think those sustainability and conservation go nicely together. Maybe sustainability, conservation, planning go nicely together and could be done in an hour, or not a full 2 hours, potentially. Yeah, and just if we tell people we want to have a focus things on, but they all, particularly planning, is experiencing loss of senior people, and having to replenish its staffing. So, and then sustainability has no staffing. It's a one person, so we're in a staffing world. So I'm mainly thinking of not moving one, but moving two, and I don't know which two. So,
Athena, did you want to?
So Mandy, you were the one who suggested eliminating it, but we may need it if we've got too many small departments where at least one or two of them has a substantive discussion.
Bob, please take Mandy first because I had a different
Okay.
comment.
I was gonna let Athena go first, but
Oh.
I was gonna respond to this. So I'm fine meeting on the 21st. It was just like I didn't know what the committee thought of having a 2-hour meeting and then a public hearing. And it might be wise to break up the service departments and then the assistant town manager departments into 2 shorter meetings. It's possible that if we break them up into 2 shorter meetings and put one of them on the 21st, expecting, I would probably move the service departments to that one because I think that one can actually be known to be shorter. potentially, whereas the assistant town manager set might get a little longer. I would keep sustainability with the assistant town manager set because the budget itself has sustainability under the assistant town manager conservation and planning department. So that grouping, it goes with that grouping of Dave Zomek's sort of alley. We could then potentially tentatively schedule a vote for the 31st, you know, depending on how things are going, right? It would give people more time to write the report. You know, that doesn't mean you have to take the vote on the 31st, but it's potentially to put it out. I'm just putting another thing out there of, well, maybe we could have a vote on the 31st. Or think about the possibility of one depending on how things are going. So another thought there. Yeah.
Athena has her hand up.
Yeah. Athena, did you want to comment?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to mention May 7 is Tuesday, and I know that every department head and staff member that you would like to attend will do their very best to attend, but it's a little bit short notice for the library. So if I need to move library to another day, is there a preferred day, or is the committee okay with fitting that in where we can, and I can work with Bob? I just wanted to check that there are no strong objections if we can't do that day, to putting it potentially on the 10th, or maybe with service
I would say the 10th,
departments.
or even potentially the service department day that we expect to be short too. Now that I just added something to that day, but that would be my initial thoughts.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay.
You know, and Mandy, your suggestion that if the 31st, if having whatever is on the 31st, if it ends up being shorter, if we're not at write the report, we might be at vote and 3 or 4 key messages that we want to include in the report, you know, of, you know, it's not just a yes, great, but here are the things. And then it would make it easy to draft a report that then could be circulated to us. So it's just a way of thinking of use. JCPC went fairly smoothly this year because along the way we had some, this should be in the report. This should be, you know, kind of, this is something to flag. It went easy as the person who had to write the first draft of it. It made it easy to capture some things as we went along. And Athena, on the library, I know Sharon usually prepares an elaborate presentation with lots of pictures and stuff. If she would just come in with this is the staffing, you know, and how we're going to pay for it, and then, you know, open it up with some key issues or something, but not do, she usually takes at least a half an hour is what I would say. I don't think we need that. I think we may need to spend 20 minutes or so, but it would be better to get something briefer. So if she doesn't have to prepare as an elaborate one, maybe, but in any case, moving it would be fine.
So, thanks for mentioning that, Kathy. I'm sorry, Bob, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here. It would be very helpful to have questions from committee members and share the expectation that departments aren't going to make a presentation, but really speak to the questions the committee has, unless you're expecting a presentation, and how long you'd like departments to speak about what they're doing. So if I can get a sense of the expectation there, then I can share that with department heads so they're prepared for the meeting and they're not putting together slides that you don't want.
But, you know, for places like the library, Athena, we usually don't see the detail of the budget in the town manager's budget. We see library, you know, so she has to come in and talk about staffing, and, you know, so I'm certainly by the 7th, you know, I haven't been attending the library meetings to know how tight their budget is or not, and they depend on some grant fundraising that the Friends do for them to fill in pieces. So Mandy, yeah, for the others, I think we can definitely do some in advance because we have a budget book to look at. Harder for the schools.
So you're saying that you'll have questions in advance for the other departments, and for library, you'd like an overview of staffing and fundraising?
Well, it's in her budget, yeah, I'm not being very clear. The actual library budget has a piece of funding that comes from the town that's held to no more than 4%, and they always honor that. Then their actual expenses are higher, so they supplement it with the Friends of the Jones. There's some
Right.
state grant, and then it's tight for them, and so there's been a question of how they staff. How can they meet that staffing? So I just meant that we often get a larger presentation of the programs and everything else they're running. If you look at her past presentation,
I remember.
yeah, a lot goes into them. Yeah, I'll stop.
So what would you like from Sharon?
I'd like her she can prepare anything she wants, but she should plan on talking mainly about everyone else should chime in on the revenues and expenses side, the budget side, where it's the finance committee, it's, so, that would be it.
And a shorter presentation.
And assume that if we can get that, I mean, if we don't get it before, if we get it the day of the meeting, we're not gonna have time to say, how does this work? So.
My hand is up because of library, so I just so you know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so I will stop on this. So it may be that we're pressing it to think of the 7th. Yeah.
Right. And then I know we're still talking about library, but it would be helpful to know if the same expectation is for other departments, if you're looking for a very brief presentation, or if you want to just launch into questions, it would be helpful to get a sense of that.
The other thing I was going to say about library, and I just probably need to get it out, is that we know that there's another major decision that has to be made regarding the library. We don't have the information yet. Paul is working to develop it, what to do about the unexpectedly large bid that came in from the one construction company that submitted a proposal. So there's a lot of uncertainty with the library project that hasn't been resolved and is a separate process from the budget, but it will affect library operations during the year that we're adopting a budget for. And for that reason, it may make sense to let the library go later when they have a better sense of their capital project, and then can actually talk about how the capital project relates to the operating budget, which is what we're considering.
I think that makes total sense. I completely pull out my idea that it should go on the 7th.
Okay. Councilor Haneke?
Yeah, I second what Andy said about that given our uncertainties, we're going to get a presentation or an update on the 6th about the library bidding and all of that. And so maybe putting the library on the 21st with the service departments makes the most sense. Or the 10th if we can get something in there, right? In terms of what Athena was asking, I would say for all departments outside of schools and libraries, no presentation. The manager will take care of it at the council meeting, and we can just get our questions in. We need to know the deadlines for questions because these dates are great, but I presume we need our calendar sort of is like 4 days earlier or something for each of these. So we should discuss that. But I would say no specific presentations from department heads. Their presentation could be answering the questions we submitted, but nothing beyond that. The schools you know, in the past have sometimes done a presentation. We had one for the the regional school already that was like 5 slides, but really focused on, as Kathy was saying, the revenue and expense chart. Sort of one of those basic charts that is, here's the library revenue, you know, this for the schools, it's here's the school's revenue, here's the school's expenses on their large number lines, and then here are the staffing numbers or the enrollment numbers. Just like 1 or 2 charts that give us that for the library is sort of what I'm thinking would be sufficient. You know, not, we can obviously go find, just like we can with the schools, the line item budget, but we're not really line item people in this finance. We're the bottom line, and knowing those bigger categories of this is personnel, this is this, where are the revenues coming from? What is the town's, you know, how does the town's revenue work into all the revenues for the library? And then, you know, if you think about the budget book that we get for the town, you know, some of those key concerns, you know, if you look at whatever department, one of those pages, Athena, that says, you know, here's the personnel lines, here's kind of a mirror of that page if possible, you know, for say the town clerk's office has a page, the facilities department has a page, something that mirrors that, but as a library as a whole might, I think would be useful, but only like 1 or 2 pages.
Okay, Bernie?
Yeah, just to concur with the discussion about the library, I think getting a couple of charts that show revenue and expenses, focusing on that would be very helpful. The big question will be the endowment, because the endowment was the linchpin for the construction project. And it's also a key part of the library's ongoing funding.
Yep.
They think 4 or 5% every year to add to their budget. So if they're how they're going to manage, if they can manage the difference in cost in the building construction will be an issue. So focusing on revenue and expense would be helpful.
Yeah, and Bernie's point about the endowment, it's one of the revenue sources, so it's unique in that there's a revenue and there's a draw on it. And that's always been part of the presentation, not always telling us what the endowment is, but they tell us what the draw is, you know, that they're holding it to X%. So, you know, Athena, what we've done in the last couple of years, so as Mandy said, us getting our ducks in order is if we take a topic, as we divide it up among the finance committee, we've been trying to get our questions into the chair, and it used to be to Sean, who would make sure the departments had them. And then we worked off responses to the questions or lead off, and we tried to get them to people enough in advance, like 2 days before they were on, so that they could formulate responses. So sometimes they were pure questions, sometimes they were requests for additional information.
Yeah, we need to get moving on that.
So
Right.
that would be capital questions need to come in today,
Yeah.
like probably by 3.
And the capital questions are going to go to Paul, correct? I mean, you know, Sandy Pooler is there as well. Okay.
I'm gonna ask that members share their questions with me and Bob, and I'll coordinate with the rest of our finance team to make sure they get to the right people and we have answers.
No, I wasn't going to bypass you. I was just thinking who will answer, who is the recipient. Once you and Bob get the questions, and then in capital it'll be Paul and or Sandy. So, well, I was chair of the committee. I could send some questions in. It would be an odd thing to do, but I could. I'd be happy.
I wasn't on the committee, but I reviewed capital yesterday. So I probably I can probably clean up a set of questions.
Okay, so Mandy's taking. So Mandy's taking.
You want me to take capital having not been on JCPC, if it seems a little weird to have the JCPC people heading that, I can certainly head up capital.
And
Okay, great.
getting by 3 today, revenues. I'm thinking of I might be able to do revenues. No one else wants it. I'm going to volunteer for schools. Just to force myself to pay some attention to what each sector is doing. And if I don't take schools, I'll take, I don't know what else you want to hear, but on revenues, I continue to have some questions about how we show where we're financing things we're doing with grants. And so it's one time, and I think if I go all the way through the budget book, I can kind of find it, but I don't always know how to find it. Where we're able to do something, it's expense, but it's because we brought not the regular Chapter 90 or Chapter 70 money, but the Stephanie bringing in money, or DPW and the planning department bringing in a large amount of money. So Andy, you brought up revenues, so I don't know whether you had specific thoughts on questions on revenues.
There were a couple of things that I had thought about, but ultimately it's a question of also that's where you start projecting into future years and what the possibilities are, because I think we pretty well are set in knowing what our revenue projections are for this year and what we know and what we don't know. We
Right.
don't know what the final state budget is going to be, obviously, is a big one. There are local revenues that have variability to it because there are factors like motor vehicle excise.
Well, there's also new growth where we always hold it flat because we don't know what it'll yield. But meanwhile, we do know what's in the pipeline. I mean, we're being correctly conservative on it. I have no doubt, but it's the adjusted real growth number is always considerably more than the penciled in real growth estimate. So I think we're formulating some questions. So, I mean, I can send a couple questions in and Paul can just know we may want to talk about revenues.
So we need some more volunteers to kind of lead different sections. So Kathy, you're willing to
I'm
take.
volunteering for school. I've done DPW and I've never done schools, so I am volunteering for schools.
Matt?
Hey, Bob, I just want to let you know I'm more than happy to take any section that's assigned to me and we'll lean in on it. So I'm a little bit busy right now, so just making sure I'm coordinating dates is kind of the big thing, but I'm absolutely here to do a review as needed.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm willing to take on public safety, which is a big one.
Yeah, I was saying the same thing.
Andy, do you want to take
Which is or the question is whether we actually should divide public safety, because with CRES and police and fire, that's a big area. It's like schools.
Yeah.
And
well, Andy, do you want to take police? Because I know that's been a concern of yours.
Yeah,
Not,
I can do more. We can, if we end up with a couple of people who are doing public safety, we can just do the division, but let those two people then do the division of the public safety.
Well, then I'm willing to do that with you then.
Okay.
And then Bernie had volunteered to do, was it DPW?
DPW.
Yep. Yep.
And Kathy has schools. I know, Mandy, you said you.
I can add something beyond CIP, but I'd like Matt to get a choice of what he'd prefer to do before I add something on.
And Mandy, you wanted revenues too, right?
Well, I'll send in a couple of revenue
Kathy's
questions.
gonna send in questions, I'll send in questions. I think revenues is sort of like everyone's kind of
Okay.
chipping in.
And Bernie, are you thinking when you say DPW, you're also picking up enterprise funds?
Yeah, because that's all tied together.
Yep, it is.
Okay.
So we need,
So Mandy is asking Matt to make a choice if he has any preference.
I'm sorry, Bob, would you catch me up to what are the available or
okay, so
needed?
what's available now are the things called town manager, which is scheduled for the 10th. Then the conservation planning and inspection services, the sort of Dave Zomack things, and then the services, the public health, senior center, recreation.
I did services last year, so I would be happy to take that again.
Okay.
Since I have some familiarity with those budgets. What's the date for that, Bob? I'm sorry.
Well, right now they're the
May
21st.
21st. Yep.
Right, 2 p.m. Okay, I can do that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So Mandy, what else what would you like? There's
I was gonna say, I'd take the Dave Zomack stuff. I'm most familiar with that because
Okay.
of my service on CRC, but that would leave Alicia, who's not here today, with something on the 10th, which seems wrong.
Right.
So I'm happy to take the manager stuff on the 10th.
Okay. And I'll ask Alicia if she can do the Dave Zomack.
Is the 31st, I'm not looking at my calendar, but is that a Friday day?
Yes.
And do you know whether the Friday time was a difficult time for her? I mean, I'm just noticing she's not here today.
She said, I mean, early on, we asked if people could do that day, that time on Fridays, and no one said they couldn't. So
Okay, so it's just, all right.
that was like, several meetings ago.
No,
Mhm.
I know that. Yeah, Bob, I know we struggled to find the second date, and Thursdays weren't good, so we're here. Well, we
If she
can,
can't, if Alicia can't do it, I can do the conservation planning and inspection services.
yeah, and there's enough space. I'm a volunteer type of human being, but if also willing to do the 31st. There's enough space between the two of them for me, between
Okay.
the 14th and the 31st. So I'm the backup if she can't do it. Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess Mandy said she would do it too, but then it leaves the 10th. The
No,
10th.
I'll do the 10th. I will tell you, I'm gonna have questions for all the departments, so I'll I'll be sending things in since it's my first real time on finance. I'm gonna read the whole budget and all, but no, I can certainly be back up too on the Zomac stuff because of my familiarity with it through CRC.
Okay. Well, we'll cross that bridge.
Yeah.
Okay. So does anybody have any other? I think we've covered everything on that, haven't we? I think so.
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. Anyone else have any other questions or comments?
So I have a question about something that's not here at all. We postponed because we changed the meeting time and they couldn't make it. The accounting,
Auditor.
the auditor report. So Athena, I don't know what the timetable is on that. If that can just get moved to June, but that's clearly where we're going with with what's happening in May. So it was a question on that, not anything else.
Holly, can you chime in on this? I think we've already scheduled with them to meet with the committee on the 7th
Of
of
of-
May.
of May. So that's, as May also has that meeting in it?
Yes, so I have scheduled the auditors for May 7th meeting. I mean, if you folks want to move it, I can try to reschedule with them again. I guess that's your choice, but they are already scheduled.
Okay, if they're on the 7th, I think we're going to be fine, Holly, because the revenue kinds of questions flow into overall budget questions as well, so we can focus on capital, and then we can figure whether the auditor wants to be first or second on the agenda. Okay, so that was my question of where that is. That was my question.
Yeah, I had scheduled it for the 7th.
Okay,
That's
think
the
we've
only
got
thing.
time.
yeah, we'll have time.
My preference would be to schedule them first, simply so they're not just sitting around waiting while we're having other discussions.
I agree.
I think that would be more efficient for them and their time, if you can accommodate that.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think we
Thank
should
you.
do them first, get it out of the way. And then we can focus on the other discussions. Okay,
I think that's great.
all right. Well, then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, let me go through the list. I'm an aye. Mandy Jo? Or
Aye.
Counselor? Kathy?
Yes?
Matt?
Support.
Andy?
Hi.
Bernie?
I'm disappointed that we have to end this meeting, but I will support it.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks very much. Hopefully this, didn't take too much time, and we can start. Well, it sounds like everybody's already started to look at the budget. I've been on the road, so I haven't had a chance to look at it myself, but I will. So thanks, everyone, and the meeting's adjourned. I have about 11:10 or 11:10.
Thanks very much.
But
Good
Great.
discussion.
Thank you, Will.
yes, very good.